The emergency alarm screamed through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council chamber. Council leader Veltar's 4 eyes widened as the holographic display showed the terrible truth. Red dots spread across the galaxy map like a deadly infection. Each represented a star system that no longer existed. "How many?" Veltar asked, his voice trembling. 47 systems in the past cycle," reported General Crix, his scaled hands shaking as he read the data. "The Void Swarm is moving faster than our projections. At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds in less than a standard year." The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from hundreds of species sat frozen in their seats. Altarians, known for their brilliant military strategies, looked defeated. The Zentari, masters of advanced technology, stared at their useless weapons reports. Even the ancient ethereals, who had lived for thousands of years, seemed lost. Veltar closed his eyes and tried to think. The Void Swarm wasn't just another enemy. These creatures came from the dark space between galaxies. They consumed everything: planets, stars, even the fabric of space itself. Every weapon the Council had tried simply passed through them harmlessly. "Sir," whispered his aide, "perhaps we should evacuate the remaining systems and go where?" Veltar snapped. "They'll follow us anywhere in this galaxy. We need a solution, not an escape." Deep in the Council's ancient archives, the AI system continued its desperate search. It had been running for days, looking through millions of records for anything that might help. Most files contained the same useless information about failed weapons and evacuated worlds. Then it found something different. A file so old that dust had gathered on its digital edges. The classification read, "Extreme Hazard Quarantine Zone Death World Survey." The AI paused. Death worlds were planets so dangerous that the Council had banned all contact with them. Most species couldn't survive even a few minutes on such worlds. But maybe that was exactly what they needed. The file opened, revealing data about a small, blue planet on the galaxy's edge. Third rock from a yellow star. The planet's surface was covered in deadly radiation, poisonous gases, and creatures that killed for survival. Violent storms raged across its surface. The dominant species had somehow thrived in this nightmare environment. "Fascinating," the AI murmured to itself. "They call themselves humans." When Veltar saw the report, his first instinct was to delete it. Contact with Death World species was forbidden for good reason. These creatures were usually too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous for civilized society. But as he read more, something changed his mind. These humans had survived on a world that would kill any Council species within hours. They had evolved to handle extreme conditions. More importantly, they seemed to thrive when facing impossible odds. "Send the beacon," Veltar ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. His aide looked shocked. "Sir, the protocols clearly state the protocols didn't account for the end of our galaxy," Veltar interrupted. "If we're going to die anyway, let's at least try something new." The beacon launched within the hour. It carried a simple message translated into the human language. "We need your help. The galaxy is dying." Light years away, on a small space station orbiting Earth, Captain Juan was drinking his morning coffee when the communication array exploded with activity. His team rushed to their stations, unable to believe what they were seeing. Captain called out his communications officer, "Mingy, you need to see this. We're receiving a transmission from somewhere very far away." Juan set down his coffee and walked over to the main display. The message was simple, but its implications were staggering. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. Apparently, someone out there needed their help. Captain Jiwan stepped into the alien shuttle's airlock, followed closely by Minji. The moment the door sealed behind them, warning lights flashed red throughout the vessel. Alien voices chattered frantically in languages they couldn't understand, but the panic in those voices was universal. "Are they ... screaming?" Minji whispered, adjusting her translation device. "I think so," Jiwan replied calmly, checking his equipment one last time. "Probably worried we're going to die or something." The inner airlock opened with a hiss, revealing an environment that should have killed them instantly. The air was thick with chemicals that burned their throats. The gravity was wrong, pulling them sideways. Strange purple radiation bathed everything in an eerie glow. Temperature readings on Jawan's suit showed levels that would cook most living things. The humans walked out casually, like they were stepping into their own backyard. 3 alien figures waited for them, each wearing massive environmental suits that looked more like small spacecraft. Through the clear helmets, Giwan could see faces twisted with fear and amazement. One alien, tall and thin with silver skin, stepped forward shakily. "You ...
What?
You're not wearing protection," the alien said through a translator box. "This environment should be fatal to organic life." Juwan shrugged. "Feels like a nice spring day, actually. A little humid, but not bad." Minji nodded, pulling out her handheld scanner. "No. The radiation levels are pretty mild. Back home, we get more exposure just walking." Around on a sunny day, the aliens exchanged glances that needed no translation. They were looking at creatures that treated a deadly environment like a pleasant stroll. "I am Veltar," the tall alien said, his voice still shaking, council leader of the Galactic Alliance. We weren't sure if your species would survive the journey." "The journey was great," Juwan said with a smile. "Your ship's artificial gravity is really smooth. Our engineer Doyan would love to see how you built it." As they walked through the ship's corridors, more aliens pressed against the windows to stare at them. Each one wore full environmental gear, while the humans breathed freely in air that would dissolve alien lung tissue. The ship's crew whispered among themselves. Pointing at the Deathworld creatures who acted like nothing was wrong, they reached the main briefing room, where Veltar activated a massive holographic display. The image showed their galaxy, with huge red zones spreading across it like a disease. Entire star systems were marked as consumed or destroyed. "This is the Void Swarm," Veltar explained, his voice heavy with despair. "They've destroyed 4 star systems in the past month. Our best estimates show they'll reach the core worlds within a year." Hyun and Nari, the human tactical analysts, studied the display with the same calm focus they'd use for a training exercise. While the aliens in the room trembled at the sight of their galaxy being devoured, the humans simply took notes and asked practical questions. "How fast do they move between systems?" Hyun asked, pointing at the progression patterns. "What's there?" "Typical attack formation," Nari added, zooming in on the most recent battle sites. Veltar stared at them in disbelief.
Bye.
"You're looking at the destruction of billions of lives and you're asking about tactics?" "Well, yeah, Hyun," replied matter-of-factly. "If we're going to fight them, we need to understand how they work." "Fight them?" another alien gasped. "Every species that's encountered them has been completely destroyed. Our most advanced weapons don't even slow them down." Minji looked up from her notes. "Have you tried nuclear weapons?" "Nuclear weapons?" Veltar's 4 eyes widened. "Those are theoretical planet killers. No civilized species would ever build such things." "Oh," Giwan said quietly. "We have about 20,000 of those." The room fell completely silent. Now the aliens stared at the humans like they were looking at walking nightmares. These creatures from the Death World didn't just survive in impossible conditions, they casually discussed weapons that could destroy entire worlds. "You ... You built planet killers?" Veltar whispered, had Tunari explained simply. "We were worried about asteroids hitting Earth. Also, we had some pretty intense wars for a while there." The aliens realized they weren't just dealing with hardy survivors. They were facing a species that had turned their deadly world into a forge, creating weapons and warriors that the civilized galaxy couldn't even imagine. Veltar's hands trembled. As he activated the next holographic display, the image showed a massive, dark structure that seemed to absorb light itself. It looked like a twisted cathedral made of shadow and nightmare, stretching for kilometers in every direction. "This is a Void Swarm hive ship," Veltar explained, his voice barely above a whisper.
Our
scientists have discovered that each hive contains a quantum core. If we could place specialized charges directly against these cores, we could theoretically create a chain reaction that would destroy the entire swarm. The alien scientists around the table nodded grimly. One of them, an insect-like creature with multiple arms, gestured at the display. The The problem is getting inside. Exist in a state of quantum flux. The interior is filled with radiation levels that would kill any known species instantly. How instantly? Juan asked, leaning forward with interest. Within seconds, the scientist replied. The quantum energy tears apart molecular bonds. Like being inside a star. Minji pulled up her own scanner readings. What about the vacuum? Are we talking about spacewalks? Worse, Veltar said sadly. The charges must be placed by hand, directly against the core. The person doing it would need to survive in hard vacuum, in temperatures near absolute zero. While being bombarded by lethal radiation, it's impossible. The aliens expected the humans to recoil in horror. They expected long discussions about the impossibility of the mission. They expected fear. Instead, Giwan turned to his team. What do you think? Sounds like a Tuesday back home. Pretty much, Hyun agreed. Remember that reactor repair we did last year? This seems similar. The radiation might be a problem, Nari said thoughtfully, but Doyen's suit modifications should handle it. The aliens stared in complete shock. The humans were discussing a suicide mission like it was routine maintenance work. You... You would volunteer for this? Veltar asked in disbelief. Of course, Jiwan replied simply. It's what we do. While the aliens tried to process this response, Doyon was already pulling up technical specifications on his tablet. At the human spacesuits they'd brought, then at the alien quantum charge devices. I can modify our suits to carry the charges, he said, making notes. The main challenge is going to be the quantum interference. Our electronics might not work properly. How long do you need? Giwan asked. Give me 6 hours, Doyen replied. Maybe 8, if you want backup systems. Across the room, Soyen was studying the alien technology with intense focus. The council's top scientists watched in amazement as she quickly grasped concepts that had taken them decades to understand. This quantum resonance frequency, she said, pointing at the display. You're using a base 12 mathematical system, but wouldn't base 16 be more efficient? The lead scientist, a creature that looked like a walking crystal, nearly fell out of his chair. How did you? We've been working on that problem for 50 years. It's just math, Soyen said with a shrug. Back home, our kids learn this stuff. In school, the aliens exchanged glances, filled with a mixture of awe and terror. These Deathworld creatures weren't just physically tough, they were intellectually adaptable in ways that seemed impossible. The quantum charges, Veltar said slowly. They require precise calibration. One mistake, and they could explode prematurely. Or worse, create a rift in space-time. No problem, Soyen replied, already downloading the technical specifications. I've worked with unstable quantum fields before. We use them in our power plants. Your power plants? The crystal scientist gasped. You harness quantum energy for civilian use? How else would we power our cities? Soyen asked, genuinely confused by the question. The room fell silent again. The aliens were beginning to understand that humans didn't just survive on their death world, they had turned its dangers into tools. They used deadly radiation for power. They built weapons that could destroy planets. They treated lethal environments as minor inconveniences. There's something else, Veltar said quietly. The mission is one way. The quantum explosion will destroy everything within a light-year radius. There's no escape. Giwan looked around at his team. Each one nodded without hesitation. We understand, Giwan said calmly. When do we leave? The aliens realized they weren't just witnessing courage. They were seeing something that didn't exist in their civilized galaxy. They were watching beings who had evolved beyond the fear of death itself. The ultimate test. The military transport ship hummed as it carried the human team toward the most secure council base in the galaxy. Taiho stretched his legs in the set, cramped alien seating, while Yuna checked her equipment one last time, through to viewport. They could see the massive fortress floating in space, a structure built to train the galaxy's most elite warriors. Remember? Giwan said quietly to his team. They think we're fragile. Let's show them what Earth really taught us. The base commander, a towering reptilian alien named Zektor, greeted them with barely concealed skepticism. His scales rippled. with amusement as he looked down at the small human delegation. "So these are the famous Deathworlders," he hissed. "They look so... delicate." Other alien soldiers gathered around, their various species, all sharing the same doubtful expressions. Some whispered among themselves, wondering how these soft-looking creatures could possibly be dangerous. The humans had become something of a legend across the galaxy, but seeing them in person was underwhelming for beings who stood twice their height. "We've prepared our standard training course," Zactor announced, leading them to a massive chamber. "Though perhaps we should use the beginner level for your safety." The training room stretched out before them like a nightmare obstacle course. Spinning blades whirred through the air, plasma barriers crackled with deadly energy and gravity. Fields shifted randomly across the floor. Alien trainees usually spent months building up to complete even half of this course. Taiho cracked his knuckles and grinned. "Looks fun. Mind if I go first?" Without waiting for an answer, he sprinted into the course. The watching aliens gasped as he dove under the first spinning blade, rolled through a plasma barrier gap, and vaulted over a crushing piston. What should have been a careful, methodical approach became a fluid dance of movement. "Possible," breathed one of the instructors. "He's not even using protective gear." Yuna followed right behind, her movements even more graceful. She seemed to anticipate every trap, sliding under barriers and leaping over obstacles with the ease of someone taking a morning jog. The alien's mandibles dropped as she completed sections that typically took their best students hours to master. "Is this really your hardest course?" Yuna called out, not even breathing hard. "On Earth, we call this a warm-up." The alien soldiers exchanged shocked glances. Their deadly training course was being treated like a playground by these supposed primitives. Zactor's confidence began to crack as he watched. His carefully designed death trap became an amusing challenge for the humans. But the real surprise came when Guan suggested a combat exercise. "Let's try some team battles," he said casually. "Your best squad's against us." The aliens eagerly accepted, thinking they could finally show these upstart humans their place. After all, they had superior technology, better armor, and decades of military training. How could 3 humans possibly compete? The first battle was over in minutes. Guan's team didn't follow any recognized tactical patterns. Instead of the careful, methodical approach taught in military academies, they improvised constantly. They used the environment as weapons, turned the aliens' own technology against them, and struck from unexpected angles. "They fight like the environment itself is trying to kill them," one defeated alien soldier muttered, nursing a bruised ego. The revelation as the training continued. The alien observers began to understand something profound. These humans weren't just tough, they were the product of a world that had been trying to kill them for millions of years. Every movement, every instinct, every split-second decision was honed by countless generations of survival. Where other species had evolved on peaceful worlds with predictable dangers, humans had grown up with earthquakes, hurricanes, predators, diseases, and 1,000 other threats. Their planet had been their drill sergeant and had created the ultimate warriors. Commander Zactor watched in stunned silence as his elite troops were consistently outmaneuvered by beings who treated Mortal Kombat like a friendly game. The humans weren't just skilled, they were having fun. "Now I understand," he whispered to his aide, "why they call Earth a death world." The final mission, the stealth ship Silent Hunter drifted through the darkness of space, its hull barely visible against the star-filled void. Inside the cramped cockpit, Minho's hands moved smoothly across the alien controls, his human adaptability allowing him to master the foreign technology within days. Beside him, Gin monitored the sensor arrays, her calm focus a stark contrast to the trembling alien crew members behind them. "Target acquired," she whispered, her voice steady despite what lay ahead. 3 hive ships, each the size of a small moon. Through the viewport, the enemy fleet came into view. The Void Swarm vessels looked like something from humanity's worst. Nightmares twisted. Organic structures that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Dark tendrils stretched between the ships like veins. and their surfaces writhed with movements that suggested things better left unseen. The alien crew members immediately began showing signs of distress. Veltar, a seasoned warrior from the Kristen species, was shaking so badly he could barely hold his weapon. His crystalline body, usually a brilliant blue, had turned a sickly gray color. "I can't look at them," he whispered, covering his multifaceted eyes. "There." An abomination groaned. Crix, a tentacled being who had fought in dozens of battles. "Everything about them is wrong. They shouldn't exist." But the humans remained completely calm. Juan studied the enemy ships with the same focused attention he might give to a difficult puzzle. There was no fear in his eyes, no trembling in his hands. To him, these were simply obstacles to overcome. "Yun, what do you see?" he asked quietly. Heian pulled up detailed scans on his tablet, analyzing the massive structures with clinical precision. "Interesting architecture," he murmured, as if discussing a building project rather than vessels of cosmic horror. "The organic sections are definitely weak points. Look here, these junction areas where the tendrils connect. They're not armored like the rest." And here he continued, pointing to pulsing areas along the hull. "These look like some kind of sensory organs. If we can blind them first, it'll buy us time to reach the main objective." The aliens stared at him in disbelief. How could he speak so casually about these nightmare vessels? How could he find weaknesses in something that made their minds recoil? In terror, Nari spread out a holographic map of the largest hive ship. "Infiltration route mapped out," she announced. "We go in through the lower maintenance shafts, avoid the main populated areas, and make our way to the central core. It should take about 40 minutes if we move fast." 40 minutes? Veltar's voice cracked. "Inside one of those ... things piece of cake," Minho said with a grin, making final adjustments to their approach vector. "I've been in scarier places. Remember that cave system on Kepler 44b? Now that was creepy." The other humans chuckled, sharing memories of dangerous missions as if they were talking about weekend camping trips. Their casual attitude was more unsettling to the aliens than the enemy ships themselves. Into the nightmare as they drew closer to the hive ships, the true horror became apparent. The vessels weren't just alive, they were aware. Thousands of eyes, each the size of a house, tracked their movement. Mouth-like apertures opened and closed along the hull, revealing rows of teeth that defied description. The alien crew members had gone into full panic mode. Some were curled in fetal positions. Others were reciting prayers in their native languages. The ship's medical officer was unconscious, having fainted at the sight of the approaching nightmare. But the humans, they were getting excited. "Look at the detail work on those biomechanical interfaces," Hyun said admiringly. "Whoever designed these really knew what they were doing." "The tactical implications are fascinating," Juan added, studying the enemy formations. "They're using fear as a weapon, but it only works if you let it." Gian brought up the communication channel. "This is weird," she said, listening to the strange signals coming from the hive ships. "It's like they're trying to get inside our heads, but it's not working." "Maybe it's because we're already used to horror," Nari suggested. "Earth gave us zombies, serial killers, and horror movies. This is just another Tuesday for us." The aliens couldn't understand it. Here were beings facing cosmic horror beyond imagination, and they were treating it like a technical challenge. The humans' complete lack of fear was more alien to them than anything they'd ever encountered. "How?" Veltar managed to ask through his terror. "How are you not afraid?" Guan looked at him with genuine confusion. "Afraid of what?" "It's just another enemy." "Sure, it's big and ugly, but so was the last one. We've got a job to do." As they prepared for infiltration, the humans' calm confidence began to have an unexpected effect. The alien crew members, seeing their human allies so unshaken, started to find their own courage. If these Deathworlders could face the void without flinching, maybe there was hope after all. The mission was just beginning. But already the humans had achieved something thought impossible. It looked cosmic horror in the face and smiled. Inside the beast, the airlock hissed open. Immediately the humans knew they weren't in normal space anymore. The air itself felt wrong, thick, humid, and filled with a metallic taste that made their tongues tingle. Strange organic walls pulsed around them like the inside of a living creature, and the floor beneath their feet felt soft and squishy. "Well, this is cozy," Guan muttered, checking his equipment one last time. The atmospheric readings on his scanner were showing levels of radiation and toxic gases that should have killed them instantly. But the humans had come prepared with their advanced suits, and more importantly, they had something the aliens didn't: the ability to adapt quickly to hostile environments. Minji wrinkled her nose at the smell. "Smells like a gym locker mixed with rotten eggs," she said, surprisingly calm for someone walking through what could only be described as a living nightmare. "At least it's not as bad as that swamp planet we visited last month." Behind them, the alien monitoring team watched through helmet cameras in stunned silence. The environment readings alone should have sent any sane being running in terror. The walls were secreting acids that could dissolve most known metals. The air was filled with spores that could cause madness, and the very ground they walked on was trying to digest them. But the humans just kept walking forward like they were taking a stroll through a park. "Movement ahead," Dojan reported, his voice steady, despite the grotesque shapes moving in the shadows. "Looks like we've got company." The first void creature that emerged from the darkness was the stuff of nightmares. It stood 3 times taller than a human, with multiple arms ending in razor-sharp claws, and a face that seemed to shift and change every time you looked at it directly. Its roar shook the entire corridor, a sound that was designed to paralyze prey with pure terror. The human's response was immediate and practical. "Big, ugly 12 o'clock," Minji called out, already raising her weapon. "Standard formation, watch the claws." They moved like a well-oiled machine, each human knowing exactly what to do without needing detailed orders. Giwan drew its attention from the front, while Minji and Doyan flanked it from the sides. Their movements were fluid, coordinated, and completely without fear. "Is that the best you've got?" Doyan taunted as he dodged a swipe from the creature's massive claws. Seen scarier things in Earth's oceans, the alien observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. These humans were actually fighting back against a void creature, something that had never been successfully challenged by any known species. And they were winning. The impossible mission deeper in the ship, Soyin and Taiho were making their way toward the power core. The environment here was even more hostile. Walls that tried to grab them, floors that shifted beneath their feet, an air so thick with toxins that their suit filters were working overtime. "Quantum charges ready," Soyin reported, her voice calm despite the nightmare surroundings. She moved through the organic corridors with the confidence of someone who had faced worse things on Earth. Just need to find the right spot to place them. Taiho was studying the pulsing walls around them. "These biomechanical interfaces are actually pretty interesting," he said, pointing to areas where technology seemed to merge with living tissue. "Whoever designed this was brilliant, in a terrifying sort of way." Focused, Taiho Soyin laughed. "You can admire the architecture after we blow it up." They encountered their first major obstacle when a massive void guardian emerged from what looked like a wall. This creature was even larger than the ones the other team had faced, a writhing mass of tentacles and teeth that filled the entire corridor. Its psychic scream was so intense that it should have driven any living being instantly insane. Instead, Taiho looked annoyed. "Great, another screamer," he said, pulling out his sonic disruptor. "I hate the loud ones." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 2 humans, vastly outnumbered and outsized, taking on a creature that was essentially a living weapon of mass destruction. They used every trick they'd learned on Earth: teamwork, improvisation, and the stubborn refusal to give up that had kept humanity alive for millions of years. Left side. Soyin called out, diving under a massive tentacle while simultaneously placing an explosive charge on the creature's flank. Its blind spot is about 3 meters up. Taiho used the environment to his advantage, causing the creature to damage itself when it tried to attack him. "On Earth, we call this using your opponent's strength against them," he explained to the watching aliens. Basic martial arts. The breakthrough as the humans fought their way deeper into the hive ship, something extraordinary happened. The alien monitoring team, who had been paralyzed with fear since the mission began, started to find their courage. Watching these small, seemingly fragile beings face cosmic horror without flinching was inspiring in a way they'd never experienced. If the humans can do this, Veltar whispered to his teammates, maybe we can too. Meanwhile, Jiwan's team had reached a crucial junction point. The organic walls around them were pulsing faster now, as if the ship itself was becoming agitated. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling, and the air filled with sounds that suggested something very large was moving toward them. Charges placed. Soyan's voice crackled through the communication system. Ready for extraction? Copy that, Jiwan replied, already planning their exit route. Nice work, team. Let's get out of here before this place gets angry. As they began their withdrawal, the humans moved with the same calm efficiency they'd shown throughout the mission. They weren't running in panic. They were conducting an orderly retreat, covering each other and maintaining formation even as the nightmare around them began to collapse. The aliens watching could only shake their heads in amazement. These humans had just accomplished the impossible, and they were treating it like just another day at the office.